Hello, I'm Brigantia, Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Friday. Welcome back to Storyteller's Corner. This week we're going to be looking at the movie Moonstruck. In particular, I want to focus on the two leading roles. Loretta Castorini, who was played by Cher, who also won an Oscar for Best Actress in a Leading Role, and Ronnie Camilleri, who was played by Nicolas Cage. This movie is an oldie but a goodie. It came out in 1987. There were also another Oscars that were won for this movie. Olympia Dukakis won an Oscar for Best Actress in a Supporting Role. And then John Patrick Shanley won an Oscar for Best Writing in the category Screenplay Written Directly for the Screen. And the film had other nominations for Oscars, Vincent Gardenia for Best Actor in a Supporting Role, and Norman Jewison for Best Director. So this film is no slouch. Which is one of the reasons why I still enjoy watching it, even though my attitude towards the 1980s and most of the things that came out of it is decidedly grim. Just not my decade. I don't care for the aesthetics. I don't like just a lot of things to do with it. But there are still diamonds to be found in the midst of all the other rough stuff. So let's look a little bit at these characters. Loretta Castorini, she is a widow. She just got engaged to Johnny Camilleri. And then gets shipped off to Sicily because his rather loudmouth and abrasive mother is on her deathbed, or so she says. And then we have Ronnie Camilleri, who is Johnny's younger brother. They had some bad blood between them. And after getting engaged, Johnny asks Loretta to go to invite Ronnie to the wedding because he wants to make peace with his brother. Loretta has never met Ronnie before. She didn't know that Johnny even had a brother, but she agrees to go see him, and that's when it all gets interesting. Now, even though I'm only focusing on Loretta and Ronnie in this video, there are lots of other characters in this film, and you'll notice a pattern. All the women in the movie are very grounded individuals. They're very practical, kind of just keep putting one foot in front of the other and things will turn out okay, kind of pragmatists. Their emotions do run deep, but their emotions aren't necessarily running the whole show. They have a little bit more emotional self-control, at least as far as what goes on expressing it on the outside. Then you look at the men in the movie. These are the true romantics. They are the poets of operatic proportions. They're more fiery and passionate than the women in their lives, and they have this airy quality about them, just a touch of inspiration that gives them this air of discontent to a certain extent. And it is this dynamic between the men and the women, between both the leads as well as the supporting cast, of kind of this earth and water versus fire and air, as well as, masculine and feminine energy that's just moving the plot as well as the development of the characters. And it's a lovely example of the natural ebb and flow, both between these elements as well as masculine and feminine energies, which is, well, why I'm bringing it to everyone's attention now. So Loretta goes to see Ronnie to invite him to the wedding. Ronnie has a bit of a spaz out. He's good at that sort of thing. And we discover that he blames his brother Johnny, unfairly, for an accident he had in which he lost one of his hands. Ronnie had been engaged at the time, and when his fiancée was informed of his maiming, she left him and ran off with some other dude. Ronnie has found this all very unfair, that he lost his hand, he lost his bride, and then Johnny has his hand and Johnny has his bride, and he just pitches this complete dramatic conniption fit. Once he calms down just a smidge, Loretta asks if they could just go somewhere and talk. Ronnie agrees. They go to his apartment over his bakery, and Loretta just takes over his kitchen, and she begins cooking a couple of steaks. Ronnie declares that he's not hungry. Disinterested in his objection, Loretta declares in a firm voice that he'll eat it. He counters by saying he likes his steak cooked well done. Loretta then informs him that he'll eat it bloody to feed his blood. This sets the tone for their combustible dynamic. So they begin to talk, and we come to find out there hasn't been a woman in Ronnie's life after his fiancée left him, and the only person Loretta dated after the death of her husband, which has been 7 years, has been Johnny. They're both speaking so frankly and openly. They've never met before, but it's as if they can see past every mask the other person is wearing. They both think the other is a complete idiot for what they're doing. Ronnie's a fool for, not having moved on or had any other relationships. He thinks Loretta's a fool for being with his brother to begin with at all. And that she hasn't, explored other options. He just thinks this is just absolute madness and stupidity. And as they're talking, it's just as if they have this natural ability to walk inside of each other's heads, and they are just confronting each other with these unvarnished realities that each person has been avoiding. And the sparks begin to fly. As you likely guessed, they get caught up in the moment and they end up in bed together. By the way, if you have kids, this isn't really a movie to have the kids watch with you. I don't think so. Don't blame me if you decide to do it anyway. But the next morning, it just comes like a bucket of cold water over their heads, and Loretta just flips out, just like, I cannot believe I did that kind of thing. She tells Ronnie she's absolutely going to marry his brother, and she and Ronnie will take the secret of having slept together to their coffins, and that's just that. Ronnie says he can't do that because he's in love with her. Loretta just whacks him across the face, tells him to snap out of it. Then, in an attempt to reason with her, Ronnie suggests a deal. He says he loves two things in the world. He loves Loretta, and he loves the opera. If Loretta agrees to go with him to the opera that night, he will agree to leave her alone forever. Exasperated, Loretta agrees, and then she proceeds to spend all day preparing for this. She ends up at the beauty parlor. She tells her very excited stylist that she's giving in to go ahead and take out the gray, which apparently the stylist had been wanting to do for 3 years. And then the whole beauty shop just, swarms Loretta, plucking the eyebrows, doing her nails, getting the makeup done. After that, Loretta goes shopping and she sees this, what would have been a pretty killer dress in the 80s, and she has to go in and get it. And then finally she meets back up with Ronnie at the Metropolitan, and she's just this vision of glamour. After the opera, they end up in front of Ronnie's place, and he's asking her to stay with him. And he gives this really beautiful speech, and I think it's something that only Nicolas Cage could have performed. If you watch the movie, you'll know what I mean. It would be very difficult for another actor to pull it off. But he said, I'm just going to quote the best parts. He said, I love you. Not like they told you love is, and I didn't know this either. But love don't make things nice. It ruins everything. It breaks your heart. It makes things a mess. We aren't here to make things perfect. The snowflakes are perfect. The stars are perfect. Not us, not us. And I love this quote and this speech so much, because the idea that love is just love and it creates problems even as it solves other problems, this resonates with me more and more. There's something just so brutally realistic about that take. Love is going to cost us. And the reason we risk it isn't because we fool ourselves into believing that we can avoid the toll, but that we are willingly paying it. We know we're going to pay it, and we do it anyway because the cost doesn't outweigh what we gain. Even with the trouble that love brings us, it is still bringing us something to our lives of even greater value, something we couldn't find in just anyone, something we perhaps couldn't find in another soul on earth. And it is that connection that inspires us to face and accept the bad so we can have the good in its turn. And it's the totality of the pain and the joy that love brings that makes it beautiful. It isn't about only the beauty is what makes it worthwhile. No, it is the whole thing. And that beauty, with the good and the bad, pain and the joy, is worth the price. And that's the point of the entire movie. And I think that's why it makes such a compelling romance and why you can find yourself so invested in what happens to these characters. Not just Loretta and Ronnie, but also Loretta's parents and other characters that pop up in the movie. So if you haven't watched this before, I do highly recommend. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised. And if you have seen it before, well, then you already know its virtues and didn't need me to tell you. But I think that's it for right now. If you'd like to talk movies or romance or about how we can see certain qualities of certain elements play out in our fictional stories, and how we can kind of see how this ebb and flow between, the elements and the masculine and the feminine, it's something that we just unconsciously realize as humans, even if people don't see the world through pagan terms. If you'd like to talk about that or anything else paganism related, I'd love to have you at Blackbird's Brew. There's a link to join in the description box below. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.